Hello everyone, my name is Penner and welcome to the channel. I'm a blue-collar construction worker who writes fiction and argues politics on the internet from a center-right perspective in my spare time. So if that perspective interests you, please go ahead and subscribe. I have no formal education, so don't take me as an authority on anything other than my own profession. Do your own research, make your own conclusions, and above all, be reasonable. This is an off-the-cuff continuation of a debate I had with Academic Agent some time ago, focusing mainly on whether immigration lowers the cost of agricultural goods. Academic Agent is a dissident right YouTuber who makes videos and podcasts focusing on radical right-wing politics, economics, and other topics. You can go watch the debate if you want on his channel, as I did not live stream or record it myself. Link in the description. I'm not going to watch the video or show clips from it, just summarize AA's points from the debate and his follow-up video response. Now, let's get started. Point number 1. Corporations do things for their own interest against the interests of the people. While it is true that corporations are inherently self-interested and are not altruistic, unless they're trying to virtue signal, they are still beholden by market forces, which are determined by the choices of individuals. People want the best quality goods at the cheapest price possible. So corporations are going to compete to provide the best quality goods at the lowest possible price, which means that while there can be conflict in interest between the average consumer and the average corporation, there is a level of parity and sort of overlapping interests that exists there. So just purely stating that corporations are only doing things in their own interest is not true, because if people don't want to buy a corporation's product, they won't. If the corporation is selling it for too much, or the quality is too low, or for whatever reason, in a relatively free market where there's no massive monopolies, people will simply switch to the cheaper or higher quality option. And especially in the age of the internet, when you have access to like online shipping and online shopping and reviews, public reviews, it's very easy for people to do this, to switch to a product that is cheaper and they like more if the old product is just simply not cutting it. So no, this is completely false, and it honestly sounds pretty Marxist, which is funny coming from AA. But we'll get into his understandings of economics a little more later. Point number 2. Mexican immigrants cost more than they pay in taxes and are a net negative to the economy. I don't know if you can accurately measure how much illegal immigrants cost/pay in taxes, because many of them are going to be paid under the table, but that's irrelevant because this is missing the point. Most low-income earners are a tax burden, but that doesn't make them useless. They work lower-income jobs that still need to be filled, which frees up labor to participate in other areas of the economy. Workers are worth more than just their overall tax contribution. Measuring them that way is not useful, because there's so many more things that go into an individual person's contributions to society and the economy at large. So yeah, we can't accurately measure someone's worth simply based on just, oh well, how much did they pay in taxes versus how much did they benefit from government programs. That's not an accurate or logical metric to use. Point number 3. Immigrant labor is a form of government subsidy, and the government should just subsidize the agricultural industry instead. Now, this is somewhat true. A lot of immigrant workers come temporarily through H-1B visas, and by allowing this or being lax on border policy, the government is essentially allowing these farmers to produce their products at a lower cost. However, U.S. agriculture is already heavily subsidized, and subsidizing farmers so they can pay higher wages without increasing the price of their products isn't necessarily going to result in domestic workers picking up the slack. A lot of people in the first world just aren't interested in farm work. Not only would subsidies be an incredibly heavy burden on the taxpayer, they might not even work. Even if they did work, that would result in a massive slowdown of growth in other economic sectors, due to the 1.4 million workers who would have to leave their jobs to come work in agriculture. Point number 4. Instead of importing immigrants, we need to allow wages to naturally rise to reach balance. as someone who styles himself as something of an academic expert on economics. AA should really know better than to say this. This is fundamentally the same argument that surrounds minimum wage. Nothing in an economy exists in a vacuum. Increasing prices in one area will have effects that will ripple and rebound in others, with unforeseen effects. With the minimum wage, there needs to be a happy medium that creates a good standard of living for minimum wage workers without causing harmful side effects. This is a concept that AA understands. I know he understands. I've listened to him talk about it. So I don't know why he wouldn't apply it here. It's very strange. This is, again, a very basic economic concept. But when it comes to immigration, AA seems to completely forget about it. But we'll talk more on that later. Point number 5. The average per capita standard of living would increase and everyone would have a better standard of living if immigration was not driving down the price of labor. Once again, AA forgets a basic fact of economics. Are you starting to see a pattern here? Immigration has a multitude of effects. It increases the labor force, allowing more economic development, which is beneficial for the whole country. We can look at Russia to see an example of a country which has similar declining birth rates to other developed Western countries, but cannot grow its economy because they can't attract immigrants to live in their shithole country. Now, don't get me wrong, immigration is not just positive, and you can absolutely have too much immigration. The high cost of housing in Western countries can at least partially be blamed on the construction of new housing being slower than the increased demand for housing caused by immigration. However, once again, the effects of this are complex and hard to fully calculate. Constantly rising housing prices are great for already existing homeowners and anyone who can afford to buy. And it's great for me because it results in the construction industry booming. But it's also a massive negative for young people trying to buy their first home. Once again, this is way more complex than AA's simple explanation of evil people in power want to do this against the will of the people. The will of the people is not uniform. Not all people's interests align. Old homeowners love high housing prices. Young people hate it. But this is a complexity that AA refuses to accept in his extremely limited, narrow-focused worldview because it doesn't allow him to point to an easy, simple solution to the problem that people can get angry about. Point number 6. In California, the price of bananas has gone up while wages have gone down. Therefore, cheap immigrant labor doesn't lower the price of food. This is dumb. Really, really dumb. Economics are complex, okay? There are multiple factors that go into the cost of a product, and almost all of them have some sort of interplay with each other. The cost of living, the growth of the population, the cost of higher education, trading, etc., that all has an effect on the cost of wages. So does inflation, foreign markets, taxes, tariffs, embargoes. These things all have individual effects that connect with each other in ways that are way out of my depth. However, it is easily apparent that the cost of something is not the result of a single set of factors. You can't simply say, look, the price of bananas has gone up and the average wage in California has gone down. Therefore, there is no connection between the cost of labor and the cost of goods. That's absurd. The connection between labor costs and product costs is one of the best understood relationships in economics. AA knows this, but when it conflicts with his political views, he apparently can't grasp the concept. I really can't emphasize enough just how colossally dumb this is, especially for someone who writes and sells online courses on basic economics. Again, this is super simple stuff. It's simple enough that someone like me with a high school education, blue-collar working background can easily figure it out. If a farmer has to pay more money to make his product, that's going to result in an increase in the subsequent cost of the product in the market. This is why many companies will seek to move their manufacturing overseas, so they can sell at lower prices with higher profit margins by lowering their labor costs. We can't just let our domestic agricultural industry go overseas. Being able to domestically produce enough food to feed your own country without any imports is of massive strategic importance to any country, especially in times of geopolitical turmoil. If you can't produce enough food to feed your citizens in a scenario where global trade networks break down, you're going to see mass starvation, death, and the collapse of the country into chaos and civil conflict. This is one of China's main weaknesses. They have to rely on massive food imports to feed their population. This makes them even more vulnerable to economic sanctions than a country like Russia, which is one of the main reasons they haven't invaded Taiwan and probably never will. Now, in closing, I'm going to do a general overview of my views on immigration. Immigration has a social cost. Anytime you bring people from another country and culture into your own, you are going to suffer various social costs as a result. However, this does not mean that immigration is bad overall. It means that these effects need to be studied and countered with various government measures. We should avoid having too many immigrants from any single culture. We should diversify the regions immigrants settle in with incentives to prevent ethnic enclaves. And we should never allow the number of immigrants to supersede the number of new houses we can build in any given year. The left and liberals need to accept that immigration can bring problems with it. But the right needs to stop pretending like there aren't any economic advantages, or that we can't do anything to address and mitigate the negative effects. This kind of all or nothing thought process is what's creating the incredibly hostile and divided political discourse of today. If we want to create a better future, we need to be more pragmatic and find solutions that work in the real world and don't just appeal to our intuitions. Thanks for watching.